I'm Sharon Bill. Welcome to my Music Theory Tuition series where I work with you step by step through the ABRSM Discovering Music Theory grades. I'll work through every single exercise and explain everything you need to know. You can access information about the books I have available to help you on my website. Go to sharonbill.com. For advert-free and longer lessons, you can become a patron at patreon.com/SharonBill. If you can give me a like, that would be super, and please do subscribe to my channel to stay updated. You can support this channel by buying me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/SharonBill. Let's move on to page 55 of the Grade 5 Discovering Music Theory workbook, and we're now looking at the topic of inversions. And this is simply where we just shuffle the arrangement of the notes. It's exactly the same notes of the chord, but we've rearranged the order. Up until now, we've considered chords in root position, where the lowest note is the root of the chord. So for example, in C major, chord 1 is notes C, E and G, because in C major the first degree of the scale is C, and we can see that that's the root of the chord, that's the bass, and then the chord grows out of it. However, music sounds really nice, much more subtle harmonies if we just rearrange the orders, and we may not always want C to be the lowest note of the chord. And so the way we would describe it is root position, or 1A, if C is at the very bottom of the chord. If E is at the bottom of the chord, the base of the chord is E, we'd say it's 1B. And if G is the bottom of the chord, and then the same notes of the chord are rearranged around that, we'd say that's 1C. So we have position A, B and C. 1A is the root position, and then we have the first inversion, like the first shuffle of the notes, or the second inversion. The notes of the chord are exactly the same. The only thing now is we're getting a little bit more detailed in the way that we describe the chord, and we say which note of the chord is at the root, at the base of the chord. So we've got root, and then we've got the first inversion, and we've got the second inversion. And so 1A can also just be simply chord 1. That implies chord 1A, but after that we must say either B or C, and I guess you could put 1A just to be absolutely clear that you know its root position. And so it's just really a simple matter of describing the chord and now the lowest bass note as well. And so we get to write that out, and actually if you play those on a piano, up until now a root position, so here we have a G chord, G, B, D, chord 1 in G major, and it's always been kind of line, or space, because the notes are kind of one, skip, note, skip, note. However, if we rearrange it, and instead of having the G at the bottom, let's have the B at the bottom and the G at the top, we can see that we've got a bigger gap. And when you play the arpeggios, there's an extra stretch here. So just be careful to place these. And so if D is at the base, we've got that big stretch to the G, and then the B falls. And so we're just rearranging the versions of the chord using exactly the same notes. Of course, a G chord, chord 1 in G major, can only be made up of notes G, B, D. We can't have any other notes to explain that chord. However, we could have G at the bottom, we could have B at the bottom at the base, or we could have D at the bottom. And then we just rearrange the notes. So instead of G, B, D, we could have B, D, and then G has moved up. So B, D, and then we've got a little bit more of a stretch to the G. Or we could have D, and then we could have the G, and then we could have the B. So we could have D, the stretch occurs here. We've actually got a fourth here, and then the B comes on top. So we have a 1A, 1B, 1C, because if we have G, B, D, we have position A, B, C, as it were. In actual fact, you could, so long as this bass note represents the chord description, you can then rearrange the others in any multiplication on top following certain procedures, because we know that we can double up on the G, or we could have these in a slightly different order depending on how it's arranged in the music. The important thing is that we're describing which is at the very bottom of the chord. So let's do that in the bass clef. So we have G, and then we can have B at the bass for the first inversion, that's the first rearrangement, and then we could have D in the bass for the second rearrangement. So instead of having G, B, D, we could have B, D, G, so B, D, and then it's a little bit further to get to the G, or we could have D, G, B. So now the D has a little bit further to go to get to the G, and then there's the B. And so it's exactly the same notes of the chord, we've just rearranged them, and we're particularly describing which note is at the base of the chord. I hope this is helpful to your studies. Please do like and subscribe to stay updated. If you'd like to support this channel, you can buy me a coffee, and for advert-free lessons you can become a patron. Do visit my website where you'll find many resources available to help you. Visit sharonbill.com. Thanks for watching. Bye.